Donald Trump's return to the White House will have huge implications here in Washington. Trump will also have a Republican Senate and likely GOP control of the House. And unlike during Trump's first term in office, there are now more members of Congress who ran on and support the MAGA agenda. Together, this could all mean Trump has wide latitude to implement his policies. Joining me to discuss the election and what to expect in Trump's second term in office, Jesse Byrnes, senior editor here at The Hill. Jesse, depending on who you talked to last night, we either saved democracy or destroyed it. What is your reaction to what we witnessed?
I think that we saw again that polling is difficult to predict. Again, it undercounted the amount of support across the country for Donald Trump. This was an issue in 2016. There was a lot of consternation among Democrats that this could happen again. They felt pretty good after the last midterms that Democrats could also be undercounted, but what we saw last night was just a sweep across the country. In deep blue states, that the margin was much tighter than it should have been, that Democrats think, and in red states, Trump just ran up the score. And we're seeing it also play out now, not just in the battle for control of the Senate, which we expected to go to Republicans, but now Republicans favored to hold on to a majority in the House. We're looking at unified government control for Republicans come January.
We heard from Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell this morning, who credited candidate quality for the success of Republican candidates. That's something he's complained about in the past. House Speaker Johnson, optimistic that Republicans can retain control of the House. During the Biden administration, there was some infighting in the Republican Party, especially in the House when you consider those fights over the speakership and issues like that. With Trump back in the presidency, do you think the Republicans in Congress can be more focused and kind of all work together to pass an agenda?
Well, I think you're going to see, if there is in fact unified Republican control of Congress come January, there is a mandate that we saw here last night for governing, and there's some huge issues that are on the docket for Congress. The tax cuts that Trump passed in 2017, his crowning achievement from his first term, a lot of those expire at the end of 2025. And so Congress is going to have to work together to actually pass an extension. 60% of Americans are going to see their taxes go up if Congress doesn't actually have those extensions. So both parties are really going to be under pressure to take some action. Same thing with subsidies for individuals for health care. That is another issue that Congress is looking to tackle. And then also broadly, Trump trying to pull back on regulations for energy production and trying to have a realignment on some of these foreign policy issues as well.
Let's talk about what happened to Kamala Harris's campaign last night. Across multiple demographics, she did worse than Biden did in 2020. In fact, the only place she really did better was with voters 65 plus and college-educated white women. Trump made big gains with Latinos. What do you think's behind that?
Yeah, I think a huge storyline coming out of Tuesday is, of course, Trump's gain among Latinos, especially Latino men. Places like Miami-Dade, which Biden won, Hillary Clinton won, Trump won it last night, which is obviously Florida has trended red in recent cycles, but that is a huge blow to Democrats to have a stronghold like that. When it comes to Michigan, let's look at Dearborn. Biden won Dearborn with 2/3 of the vote just 4 years ago. Trump last night won with a plurality. So we're seeing the effect of voters who are upset over the Biden administration's policy with Israel and the Gaza war. That did drag Vice President Harris down in Michigan. And we saw Jill Stein pulling 18% of the vote in Dearborn. That's a huge margin. So definitely a retaliation against the Biden administration, but also Harris and her strategy to not really draw a clear contrast with Biden in the short runway that she had.
Harris is going to be addressing supporters this afternoon. What do you expect to hear from her, and what is next for Democrats? I imagine there's some soul searching in line.
Yeah, I think you can expect to hear a conciliatory tone from the vice president. Obviously, this is not the result that she wanted, and Democrats are going into this period now where they are going to be in the minority, most likely in both chambers. They are out of the White House come January, and so they are going to have to chart a path for 2 years from now when the Congress goes back to running for these midterm races, and then 4 years from now for the president. So for Democrats, there is this period of soul searching, but also making sure they learn the right lessons from this election. And I think looking at the demographic shifts, especially with Latinos at large, realizing that they're now 20% of the population. They are not a monolith. They vote in different ways. And they are, even though Democrats still hold on to a majority of them, they are now trending towards Republicans. Why is that? And asking those questions, I think, is going to be a big key for Democrats.
In your mind, is the lesson that Democrats need to learn that they need to move to the center and come with more centrist candidates, or that they need to maybe run more on a populist Bernie Sanders style message?
Well, you're certainly saying that populism is taking root across both parties. Trump, of course, is a very populist Republican figure who really changed the orthodoxy of the Republican Party when he came onto the power and on the spotlight. And I think with Democrats, too, you're going to see the reality that Biden was the last Democrat to really carry that blue wall. He was the last Democrat to really make inroads with working class voters, non-college educated as well as college educated. And so that is going to be something for Democrats. You know, that coalition that Obama had that propelled him to re-election isn't there, it seems like, at the numbers that Democrats would need to have a repeat with the Harris.
On the campaign trail, Trump made a lot of promises. When Republicans take control of possibly both chambers of Congress and the White House next year, how aggressive do you think they'll be on moving on some of maybe even his more controversial policies? You know, he talked a lot about mass deportation and a really kind of muscular anti-immigration policy. Where do you expect the priorities to be? And considering he is a lame duck president, how aggressive do you think you expect him to be?
I think they're going to be very aggressive. There was definitely a lot of some criticism in the first Trump administration that he didn't do enough, that he did pass tax reform in 2017, but that was really the only huge legislative achievement for 4 years. And so I think you're going to see Republicans come out of the gate with a lot of legislation that they want to do within the first 100 days on energy, healthcare, prices, and also looking at the reality of, you know, the power of the presidency has only increased. Every president going back decades, they've had more and more power, and so Trump wielding the executive office power that he will have on foreign policy, but also on domestic issues. Immigration is a key example. You know, does he actually fulfill the promise to have mass deportations, to increase funding for the border wall, and to install people in places of power like RFK Jr. To really slash, you know, huge areas of federal agencies? That's a real potential.
What do you expect on the foreign policy front? You know, there's been a lot of focus on what Trump's policy toward Ukraine would be, also Gaza. What kind of a foreign policy president do you expect in his second term?
Well, I think it was really telling when we saw Ukrainian President Zelensky come out pretty early in the night and congratulate Trump on his reelection, even before, of course, the vice president has conceded. And that is because a lot hinges on Trump and his decision-making with Ukraine. And he's already promised to bring a quick end to the war with Russia. But for the Ukrainians, they hope that there's some wiggle room there. They hope that he will not bring a quick end that will force them to lose ground that they have made during this war. And so there is a lot on foreign policy. Of course, a lot of countries are worried about trade, that Trump will start more trade wars if he imposes a 25% tariff on Mexican goods, if he starts more trade policy conflict with China. And so there's certainly some consternation there. But I think you're also seeing some countries, they've been through this before. They've been through 4 years of Trump, and so they kind of know what to expect with a second Trump term.
What do you make about what happened in the Senate? Some of the most vulnerable Democrats lost, thinking Tester in Montana, Brown in Ohio. In the swing states, a little bit of a mixed bag. It looks like Tammy Baldwin is going to keep her seat up there in Wisconsin, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, all really close. We did see some ticket splitting when it comes to Trump and these Democratic Senate candidates, which is something we haven't seen in the Trump era. Overall, what do you make of what happened in the Senate last night?
Yeah, it definitely was a really good night for Senate Republicans. Mitch McConnell did not hide his enthusiasm, calling it a damn good day. This is, for Republicans, they were looking at a 51-seat majority at a minimum, and right now it's looking like maybe a 53, 54-seat majority. And also just realizing they took down some major Senate giants on the Democratic side, with Sherrod Brown in Ohio, Bob Casey potentially in Pennsylvania, it looks like. Three-term Democrats who have been there for over a decade. These are huge power brokers in the Senate that these upstart Republicans took down, and that was no easy task, especially when polling indicated for months that they were behind.
Should Democrats give up on Florida and Texas? It just seems like every year they put some eggs in that basket and it gets further and further out of reach.
Yeah, we saw last night Democrats really coming up short in Texas, despite all of the attention, all of the money that was spent on it, and Cruz easily winning re-election there. And so I think you are going to see a lot of second guessing among Democrats in the future, now that we have seen Florida trending so red. I think Texas, there is some hope still among Democrats that potentially it could, with the demographic shifts, could be competitive in the future. But right now, statewide, they haven't won in 20 plus years. And so there's going to be a lot of scrutiny for the campaign arms for both the House but also the Senate going forward, whether it is justified to be spending millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in Texas.
We're still waiting on the results to see what happens over control in the House. But there were all these seats in California and New York, blue states with Republican members of the House. And because Trump was able to overperform in those blue states, it looks like that could be what ends up driving the Republicans to be able to retain control of the House. Can you just comment on that phenomenon that we're seeing where Republicans are performing better in these deep blue states?
Yeah, we have seen Democrats pick off a couple of New York Republicans, but by and large, it seems like House Republicans are having a very good election, and it does generally the top of the ticket will help the bottom of the ticket, and we are seeing that in Trump. There was a lot of consternation among Republicans. Why is he going to New York, New Jersey, California, when those are not swing states for the presidential cycle? Well, at the end of the day, they are very critical for the House majority. And so when you have Republicans actually pulling out victories in these tight places, Central California, Biden performed very well there among Latinos 4 years ago. Now they're trending towards Trump. That is going to really help House Republicans. And at the end of the day, Trump needs the House, he needs Republicans to be in control of the House in order for his legislation to actually go anywhere. And so just having control of the White House in a sense is not enough if Democrats held on to the House.
And those relationships that Trump was able to form with those members as he helps them across the finish line could pay dividends as he tries to enact his legislation. Yeah. Let me leave it at that. Jesse Byrnes, senior editor here at The Hill. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Drew.
Expanding and reinforcing the border wall, the largest domestic deportation in American history. These are promises Trump made if he became president again. Now, the time has come. NewsNation's Rich McHugh joins us to break down what Trump's return to the White House means for immigration policy.
Donald Trump has promised a sweeping reform to our nation's immigration situation. It was the centerpiece of his re-election bid, and he's promised to deport record number of migrants. NewsNation has been on the border with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance on 3 separate occasions, and here's what they have promised. Number 1, re-implement Remain in Mexico policy, which ordered that migrants seeking asylum had to remain in Mexico until their U.S. immigration court date. This is a policy that President Biden ended in 2022. Number 2, stop the catch and release program, which allows migrants who have been deemed low risk to be released until their immigration hearing. Number 3, finish the border wall. Donald Trump built 452 miles initially. Biden halted this. Number 4, re-implement deportation flights. Trump promises to deport migrants back to countries like Venezuela that currently aren't accepting these flights. He says they will have no choice and will put a stranglehold on their economy if they say no. Number 5, Trump promises to deport immigrants with criminal history. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to dismantle migrant criminal networks, stating that any migrant who enters the country illegally would face an automatic 10-year prison sentence, and if they kill an American, they would face the death penalty. Only 3 times in our country's history has this been implemented. We have reached out to Border Patrol for an official statement, which they said will likely be coming from the Department of Homeland Security. But take a look at this tweet from the Border Patrol Union saying they look forward to securing the border with President Trump. Now, NewsNation has also spoken to a number of Border Patrol agents who say they look forward to President Trump being back in office so they can once again do their job.
All right, thank you, Rich McHugh. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.